3, 2, 1. Hello out there. Hello community. Hello Church Alive. Hello Extended Church Network. My name is Jason, and I'm the executive pastor here at Church Alive. And it is my honor and privilege to have in an interview fashion this morning Ethel Meharg. Ethel, thank you so much for joining with us this morning. I'm so excited to just sit down and talk with you. For those of you who do not know, Ethel has been in the trenches in New Mexico, very passionate in many different ways and on many different subjects for a long period of time. And so it's an absolute privilege. For those of you who may not be familiar with Ethel, Ethel was a former mayor of the village of Cuba. She served in office for 10 years, if I'm not mistaken,
yes,
right? 3 terms.
As mayor, then council, yes.
Oh, my goodness. First female woman mayor elected in Cuba, correct?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Ethel has also served on the women's leadership team for women's leadership development. She served on the board of directors at New Beginnings Church of God. Shout out to you guys over at New Beginnings. I know you got some new beginnings this year, looking to a new facility, so that's great. Ethel has also worked at CareNet Pregnancy Center of Albuquerque for 5 years as the client services director. I know personally that she was involved with the Convoy of Hope because I was right next to her. We were tag teaming that, which is a tremendous, tremendous benefit to the community of Albuquerque. We tag team on that as well. And as of January 1, Ethel, you became the executive director of Right for Life Committee here in New Mexico. Quite a resume, quite a lot on the docket, and obviously Ethel has really served the state of New Mexico with passion and with great care. But Ethel, I'm just curious, obviously, you know, something is driving you. You are a passionate person. Share with us a little bit about yourself and who you are. I know I gave a long bio there, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, I've done a lot of things. Like we said earlier, people used to ask me if they would look at me with kind of consternation going, wow, you've done a lot of things. And I said, yeah,
Sure.
I didn't know what I want to be when I grew up. And so I'm still working on that, Jason. Yeah, just trying to, really just trying to follow what God has for me. And I see all those things, those accomplishments that people are like, oh, wow. No, it was just necessary and
Sure.
the steps that God was preparing me, and he's still preparing me. And so God, aren't you finished? I guess I'm about done.
Yeah.
At times I feel like that, but I look back. I say you can't really connect the dots until you look backwards and you go, oh, now I get it.
Mm-hmm.
Now I get why I went through that.
Right.
So I can understand it was preparation for what I'm doing now, preparation for what I'll do in the future.
Sure.
And so that's kind of where I'm at.
It's almost like, life is kind of like a big giant puzzle piece. You get one piece and you find its place, and then that connects to that next puzzle piece. And
Right.
somewhere along the lines, you look back in the course of your life and start seeing that fuller picture. So
Yeah,
I get that.
absolutely.
I get that. Now, one thing that you're very passionate about, and the reason that I brought you in this morning to have the hard conversations on preservation of the unborn.
Yes.
Now, I know that you are extremely passionate on this issue. You've been in the trenches. You've been in the trenches from a legislative standpoint. I assume this is personal to some degree, but can you share a little bit of that journey? Why do you fight so hard on this particular issue? What drives you personally with this?
I thought about this question a lot, and I think it takes me back to the Bible where I believe it's Mary Magdalene. She broke that flask at the foot of Jesus, and all she could do was cry. And she wiped his feet with tears, and because she knew, that her sins were many, she'd been forgiven. And he said that those who are forgiven much, love much. And hopefully we can get through all this, right? But I am the guiltiest. And so because I am, you know, I feel like both her and Paul, you know, standing at the death of, overseeing the death of Stephen. Well, I am guilty of murder, and that is that of my own child. I participated in the death of my own child. To my shame, the biggest regret of my life ever, bar none. I don't know if there's anything else. I've done a lot of really stupid things, but that was like the worst in my life. And when I found that God loved me, He forgave me, and He restored me, I thought I will go to my grave fighting for the next child. If I can save one more child, one more woman from going through the pain that I endured through all the times that I did, I'll fight. I'm going to fight to the death, till my death, and thankfully God has let me see some victories in that. I see women that are so broken because of abortion, and my heart goes out to them because I've been there. And many of them think that there is no forgiveness, no healing, no restoration. You know, I just say, look, if they say, you know, you can't make what is that, something out of a sow's ear, you know, silk purse out of a sow's ear, and I go, well, take a look. I said, God, this is what happens when God redeems you. I have no right to even be here. Frankly, everything that I do, I look and I think, God, I don't deserve to be where I'm at, but and I, frankly, not worthy of it. But it's not about that good. And He says, you're right. He says, it's not about you, it's about me and what I've done in you and everyone else like you. And He says, and I'm glad you're in there fighting. So, you know, I've just committed my life to save the unborn, to save women and men, because it does affect men just as well. And I thought, if we can just save that, set people free. I just spoke with someone last night, and they said these women have had an abortion, and they just can't, they're just so troubled by this. They don't know what to do. And I go, I have an answer for you. We can talk later, because it was a kind of a social setting. And but I'm going to do everything I can to help them, because I know what it is to be locked up in that prison and then to be set free.
Right.
And so that's what I'm here for, is to help set the captives free, like Jesus said,
Sure.
from a salvation standpoint, but also from that guilt, that anger, that shame, that clouds that issue for all these people, you know, and they walk around with that and they suffer in silence.
Sure.
And it's time to get out. It's time to get out of jail.
Right.
And it's time to defeat the enemy in this. We have to defeat bills. We have to do everything that we can to save the babies.
Yeah.
Because they go to their death like every 90 seconds. One has already died while we've been here.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to stop this slaughter of innocent children.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I think that's important. The Apostle Paul, we comfort those in the areas that we ourselves have been comforted in. And, you know, this subject is so socially divisive. And, you know, I'm sure you get labeled along
Yeah,
the way
yeah.
with a lot of, you know, labels. I don't know if everybody gets to truly see your intentions, but I think it's a very powerful angle that you're actually able to share. Hey, I'm doing this because I've been there,
Yeah.
and I know what it feels like, and I know the pain. I can not only empathize, but I can relate because I've been down this road, and it's just so much more powerful than anyone else can be in some of these angles. So I truly appreciate you being candid, and I think it's also important because it lets others know you fight because you truly care.
Right.
That it's not just about a politicizing
No.
an issue.
Yeah. I often say it's not political, it's personal.
Yeah.
It really is for me. And I think because it's personal, I fight in the political arena to bring justice, you know, and make that a reality.
Yeah.
So,
Could you go with us? Could you just take us down that journey a little bit? Because I know so many women and so many couples. You know, there is great pain in you know, just the moment. You know, there's always these questions: what are people going to say? You know, what do I tell my parents? You know, the fears of, is my life over? You know, all these scenarios. They're racing through the head of these young adults' minds, or this young lady. You know, guide us through. What are they dealing with? What are they feeling? And what would you say to help ease their pain?
Well, I say, having been in the pregnancy center movement or just involved with them, I saw many times where I think across the board, and I counseled with this one young man, and I said, pregnancy, there's something about babies that just makes people a little crazy.
Sure.
And I said, whether you're excited about that pregnancy or whether you're not excited about it, this just brings a fear of its own. Sometimes you feel like, wow, I don't know if I'll be a good parent. I don't know. Oftentimes, one of the biggest factors is I don't know if I can afford this child. Well, I used to say I'm one of 7 kids. Who could afford 7 kids, right? Mm-hmm. But the thing is that there's all these tornadoes. We used to call it the pregnancy tornado, because they go in there and they are just freaked out about what's going on, especially if it's unplanned and the circumstances aren't what they had expected. And I think that that's the biggest key. It's not necessarily the pregnancy, but the circumstances that they find themselves in. Maybe she's, she was intending to go to college. She was going to be a medical student, all these other things, or whatever she was going to be, or cosmetologist, or whatever. It doesn't really matter the degree where you're going to be.
Sure.
But all of a sudden, you think, oh, my goodness, I don't know if I can do that anymore. And Planned Parenthood, they do a really good job of telling you, Jason, you cannot. Your life is over if you have this. And they really do tell them, you cannot go on. Your life ends here with this child. And that's such a lie, because what we do is we would share there and say, you know what? It's a child. It's not a disease. It's pregnancy. And how many people do you know that were pregnant and went on to be what they wanted to be? Mm-hmm. And so we just let them know that pregnancy is normal. It's your circumstances that are not normal or may not be normal. And so that's where the fear comes in. And so we address that fear and we say, it's okay to be afraid. It's
Sure.
okay. It's okay to think, I don't have enough money, or I don't have enough, whatever that you might think. Many people think, well, I can't get my education. It doesn't end there. It really doesn't. In fact, many times people find that we're going to choose abortion, but chose life, came to realize that child was the driving force now of their life. Mm. And this is why they do the things that they do. This is why they're going to go to school. This is why they're going to do all these things, because all of a sudden they have something to live for, right? They have a child that needs them, and so they're going to go on and do those things that they really wanted to do.
Mm. Wow. I can imagine that a young lady or a young couple would just feel extremely trapped in the moment. Mm-hmm. Like you just shared, mm-hmm. So much is kind of imprinted in the sense of there are no options. Mm-hmm. You've got to push forward, in one particular way. But are there options out there? And if so, what are those options that are available to them?
Well, of course. And again, I'm going to refer back to Pregnancy Center Ministry, because that's my heart. I just love them. I cannot tell you, because they're the ones that help to restore me. And so I love them. I'll just love them forever, and I'll do everything I can for them. But I also see the beauty of what it is that they do. And so we presented every option. You're talking about it's politicized and they pigeonhole you and you say, you don't care about her and all you care is about that baby. That just wasn't true. So what we would do is we would present every option. We would tell them what they were. And one of those, basically, we let them know that, unfortunately, abortion is an option because it's legal in our state. Okay, it's legal. Roe versus Wade made that legal. But it is not a good option. And we explain to them what can potentially happen. But we tell them parenting's an option. They can also adopt, make a loving plan of adoption, or they could maybe place their child in foster care for a while, for whatever, until they can maybe get everything straightened for themselves. So there's options for these people. But I want to let women and men know that no matter what option you choose, your life will never be the same. Never. Because abortion is not the big eraser. Mm-hmm. It doesn't make it go away. In fact, it is a regret and grief that you just get to live with the rest of your life. And so the thing is that parenting, is it difficult? I never lie to them. I says, shoot, you're the one's going to wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning with that, crying baby, wet baby.
Sure.
Babies cry, they poop, they do all these fun things, they
I do. I'm well aware, for sure.
they burp all over you, right? And so they make a mess. But, there's no greater reward for a parent, raising your child. And it's not easy. It's not easy.
Sure.
I mean, anybody that's a parent, that. It is not easy, but it is worth it.
Yeah.
It is truly worth it. And, that child, I always say, people tell me this. They said, well, what about rape? And you're going to make her go through that? And I'm like, no, we're not going to make her go through that. And I said, let me tell you something. I like to educate people when it comes to that subject, because those are the two things, the life of the mother and rape. And those are like less than 1% on each. And I always ask the question, do you know what happens to a woman when she is raped? And the answer is usually no. And I said, she experiences PTSD because it's a traumatic event in her life.
Sure.
Well, do you know what happens to a woman when she experiences abortion? The exact same thing, PTSD. Now, the experts on the other side don't ever even want you to say that, but it does happen to her. They wanted it called now PTS, whatever that is, just not the D, right?
Right.
So, yes, they experience PTSD. So why would we subject her to PTSD on
Second
top
time.
of PTSD? That's just not right. You just don't do that to people. She's already gone through trauma. So we help them calm even that storm, and we help them get whatever counseling that it is that they need.
Sure.
And so, but in that event where she maybe that is too painful for her, when she about the child, she can make what we call a loving plan of adoption, because it is a loving plan. It's a selfless plan. Very difficult. I have seen documentaries of girls that have placed their children for adoption, and it's gut-wrenching. They walk away from their child, but they know that child had life, because you see, it was never the child's fault. Never. And I don't care what circumstance, it is not that baby's fault that you were in the circumstance. Even the life of the mother, I always say, let's get another opinion, make sure. And oftentimes that is so minuscule. I said, this is fine. Let's check other doctors, make sure that you're okay. And so, but the thing is, it's still never the fault of a child. And I worked with our outreach director when I was at CareNet. And her grandchild, his name was Adam. They knew that he wouldn't live but very, very short amount of time once he was born. And they told the mother to abort. You just need to abort. This baby's not going to make it. She said, why would I hurt my child? So she gave birth to him. He went through term, and he only lasted, I believe, a couple hours. But they got a little gown, and they got to spend the last part of his life with him. Only those 2 hours, she says, but it changed us. It changed us. And so you have to remember that in those moments, in that tornado, in that fear, it's never that baby's fault.
Sure. Right.
And so let's not punish the one who isn't guilty. The case of rape, punish the rapist. And then when you're trying to find out if you are really going to be in trouble. And Dr. Levitina, who is a former abortionist, said that he had performed countless, hundreds if not thousands of pregnancy terminations. And he used to do abortions, and he's now pro-life. And he said, but what you do is when a woman is in trouble, he says, you terminate the pregnancy. He goes, it's called a cesarean. He says, when you do that, he says, you terminate the pregnancy. It's not an abortion. He goes, but in that instance, nobody dies. And nobody dies. Unfortunately, sometimes one or the other or both may still die. I have a daughter who ended up with toxemia. My grandson was born at 32 weeks. Could have lost both of them. They had to go in there immediately, do emergency surgery to save them both. Okay, is there a possibility that she could have died, and the baby could have died too? In fact, he did code a couple months afterwards. But remember, it's never the fault of that child, and I want to keep emphasizing that because it isn't their fault. Why are we punishing them? If the circumstance isn't right, I'll tell you what. For every abortion, there's people just have empty arms that can't have children.
Yeah.
And they would love to have your baby. So it would be a good thing, a good gift.
Yeah.
A good gift to another person.
You mentioned something, a scenario with a couple, how their life was changed. I know, being in ministry myself, I can attest to the struggles and the blood and the sweat and the tears and the pain. But, occasionally a story unfolds, which, causes you to take that step back and say, you know what, all that toil, all that pain, it was just so worth it just to be able to experience this moment. Is there a story, as you've interacted with these young ladies and these young couples, is there a story along your way in your journey that, obviously without using names, but that's impacted you in such a way?
Yeah, I've had on the really happy side and then a very sad, where I couldn't sleep for days thinking about what had happened to them. Let me start with those, okay?
Sure.
I had a young lady had come in 5 years after she'd had an abortion, and she was just having some emotional trauma. And she came in, and she wasn't pregnant. Maybe I can't remember she testing for pregnancy, but she was so upset. And this is really common. Oftentimes, after you've had the abortion, people are like, oh my goodness, dodge the bullet. Well, you don't dodge a bullet. It often lands on them. Couple years, 5 years. Some event will trigger it. 5 years, even a decade later. And we used to say it lands on them with both feet. And this girl was a wreck. And she wept for hours. I just sat there with her. And we used to ask permission, would you like a hug? And she threw herself on me, and she wept on my shoulder for a good hour. She just wept and wept and wept over her choice. That was one of the saddest times. And she was also, I was afraid she was suicidal. I even gave her my cell phone number. We weren't supposed to, but I was worried for her. I thought, she may take her life because she's so upset over this. And she was very, very paranoid, which is another symptom that can occur. And I said, call me, please let me know that you're okay. And she did. She left block number. She left me a message that she was okay. So that was one. Then I counseled a young man who called the day after they'd had an abortion. And this one just tore me up, Jason. He said, we didn't think we were going to feel like this. He says, we have 2 children. We're happily married, I think. All of a sudden, he began to doubt all of those things of those children. And they got pregnant. They decided to have a child. And then for some reason, they went and got counsel. They decided to abort. He was just so broken. And that bothered me so much. I said, I wish we would have been able to talk to you first, but we can still help you, walk through this process, and we can help you. Yeah. So that one just really, really hurt. And I'm telling you, it stayed with me a couple 3 days, And then there's this one. She walks in and she says, I want an abortion, and don't try to stop me. And we say, all right, why don't you go ahead and fill out the paperwork, and we'll get everything done, and we'll go back into the room. And so she did, took her back. She was adamant, she was going to have an abortion. She was in nursing school. All these things were taking place in her life. But she had a boyfriend that told her he would take the child, but not her. She was rejected by him, very ugly towards her. We tried to counsel them together, but in the long run, we ended up just encouraging her. We didn't fight with her. We don't fight with anybody. We just listen to them and say, what's going on? What is it that's really bothering you? Let's talk about that. And we encouraged her along her walk, along her career path. We let her know. We just told her, you know what? You can do this, and we're here for you.
Sure.
And we can help you with with food, with clothing, baby things, because the pregnancy centers walk with the family for 3 years, with formula and diapers and things like that. So she walked away, and we prayed and prayed and prayed, and we didn't know. We thought, oh my goodness, she's had the abortion. 2 weeks later, she called back, and she says, well, I'm still pregnant. She goes, but I'm going to school. And we're like, you do that, you go to school. And so we continued with her on her way to the point that from the hospital, she walked in and showed us her brand new baby girl. And I can't tell you, we cried a lot there. I still cry a lot. But that was beautiful because, we just intervened and we just loved on her. We helped her through that time. And we didn't, again, because people say, you fight with them, you torture them, whatever they say about us. We don't do any of those things. We just love them. We just help them through. We don't fight with them. We put our arms around them if they want us to, and we pray with them. Every single person, we would ask if we could pray with them. And in not where I'm at right now, but in the pregnancy centers, they share the gospel of Jesus. And when those women, when they choose Christ, guess what they choose next? Life. So we saw many, both single and couples, come to Christ. I said, this pregnancy centers are churches disguised as pregnancy centers, because many were saved through them. So anyway, so that was one of my. Yeah.
Well, I should have brought some tissue. I should have been prepared to actually hear the stories and expected to shed a little bit of a tear. But you brought something up, and I think it's something we don't pay much attention to. A lot of couples will end up getting an abortion in the effort to save their relationship. How have you seen that play out? That a couple gets an abortion to save a relationship, but what do you see in the long run? How does that play out?
Well, maybe I'll give you like two scenarios, and or maybe a little bit more information. 80% of the reason women get abortions is because they're pressured, and most often it's by the father or the child. And so in some instances, parents will say, you can't have that. Look, your life is ruined. They have bought into the whole philosophy of that your life is over and we want better for you. And so they pressure these women to have abortions. And so oftentimes she chooses him, thinking that it will be that you'll save that relationship if you just don't have this child. And it often ends up 9 times out of 10, it's like 75% of them just don't make it. And then I was doing, I think we talked about this, some research on couples that lose a child, not through abortion necessarily, that 80% of those that lose a child, for whatever reason, don't make it. So what makes us think that if you abort the child to save your relationship with this man who's pushing you to do that, it's just not going to happen. Mm-hmm. All right? Mine was classic example. I mean, we even married. I was never able to come to terms with that, so we divorced. We divorced. 2.5 years later, all I did was cry. Mm. And so it's typical. That oftentimes the relationship just falls apart.
Yeah. So. The statistical data. What's the statistical data on abortions, and have you seen that consistent in your experience along the way? How big of an issue is this really in New Mexico?
Well, we have approximately, last numbers I've known of is like 5,000 abortions a year here. But we are known as the late-term abortion capital of the world. We actually are this is sickening, but it's a tourist thing. They use it for tourism, believe it or not. It's under tourism. And you can come, they promote it as tourism, to come here to New Mexico to have your abortion. So in New Mexico, many of those abortions that take place are from out of state. If you go down to Southwest Women's Options, every plate almost is from out of state. But yes, we have approximately, like I said, last numbers I knew of is about 5,000 per year. So, but on the other side, I don't know if you want this at this point, but statistically, 1 in 4 women has had an abortion in her lifetime. And I say to people, they are sitting next to you in your office. They're sitting next to you. They're standing next to you in the grocery store, and they're sitting next to you in your pews at church. And a lot of pastors think. One pastor said, "Not in my church." I said, I beg to differ. You know, I used to do the training for all of CareNet, and if there was a class of 12 women, 3 to 4 had an abortion. And so we had some work to do. It was we were glad that they were there because we could now bring them to healing. Okay?
Sure.
And so, but yeah, statistically that's what happens. So, but you have to remember this. If you have one woman that's had an abortion, you have one man that's had an abortion. You have a grandparent, grandma, grandpa, brothers, sisters. I know of an entire family that was so impacted by their sister's abortion that they were just, because they realized it was a loss of their niece or nephew. And it impacted every single one of them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, I think that's important when you think 1 in 4, and it's such a deep wound. It's so painful. And
Yes.
in many cases, it's so embarrassing that
Yes.
you end up having young ladies, young couples walking around with deep, deep wounds without having any ability to express that to get a healing in the process. And so when we talk about issues with just humanity in general, I mean, you're talking about very, very painful experiences that 1 in 4 ladies, that's just mind-boggling to me. Let's talk about the process as a whole. And I know I'm going to give you, those watching right now, a little bit of a heads up. We're going to be talking about from a scientific process. It is not painful to hear, so if you got younger children in the area, you exercise a little bit of discretion, but it is important that we talk about this. But I know that the process of abortion changes from trimester to trimester.
Yes.
Guide us through these different processes. What does it look like first semester, second semester, and then third semester? How does this play out?
Okay. And before we go on,
Sure.
you said it's not painful, and I think you meant it is painful.
Forgive me if
No. I just think
Yeah, no, catch me.
Yeah, they
Yep,
need to
yep.
make sure that.
Nope, that was a slip. And
Yeah,
I
no,
apologize.
it's
Thank you for
okay.
catching me.
No, because I need for you to understand
Sure.
that it's a gruesome process.
Sure.
Okay, so I'll explain to you what happens in the beginnings of when a child is first in the first trimester. They begin and they use what's called suction and curettage, and they use a big like a suction tube, okay, because the child is still so small. In fact, I think I have this is 10-week baby's feet. This is actually the size of a baby's feet at 10 weeks. Wow. Okay, and at this point, the heart's beating and everything else. Actually, the child's almost completely done. They just need to grow. So the thing is that what they do is they use this suction machine and they just suck the baby, and it just completely sucks it apart from and it dismembers the baby, okay? And then until everything comes out. And then the second trimester, what they begin to do is they get, the baby is too big to fit through that. They call it a cannula. And so they dismember. They take, Dr. Levatino has a very good video. It's animated. It's not graphic, right? It's not, there's no blood or anything, but you can see. And he says you begin to just pull limb from limb, and because they're so soft, and they just dismember that child from limb. And then what they do is, in order to get the head to come through, they crush the skull. Wow. And then they deliver the baby. Now, as the child gets too big, even for that, in the very end, like we were talking about, we are known as the late-term abortion capital of the world. And what they do is you can have an abortion here in New Mexico, just down the road, up to the day of delivery. So if at the last minute you decide, I can't do this, I'm not going to do this, I'm not going to have this baby, you can go down there, and for a mere $18,000, they'll take your child. Okay? So what they do with that one is they will into her womb there, a lethal injection, big old needle, and they work to get it into the heart of a child to cause cardiac arrest. Okay? And then they will induce labor. But what you have to understand is that lethal injection, what it does is it takes 24 hours for the baby to die. It is illegal for them to do this same injection on an animal because they call it cruel and inhumane. Yet they allow it to be done to a child. Now, I want to tell you that sometimes they miss. And if they miss the baby, they cannot go a second time because then it'll poison the mother. So they have to induce labor and get that child out.
Sure.
Sometimes that baby makes it. The baby makes it alive, but they often don't tell us about that because we've heard horror stories where if that child makes it, they'll often just leave it there to die.
Sure.
Okay? So that is the process of abortion, and who knows what other horrible things that they do.
Wow.
Okay, yeah. So it's cruel and unusual punishment for an innocent victim. That baby had nothing to do with it. It's just alive.
Yeah. Yeah. Is Planned Parenthood true health care? I know this is...
Here, I'll get a little snarky, right? No, doctors have sworn an oath to do no harm. And I think by what I just described to you, it's gruesome. It's cruel. You don't do that to another human being. They are living, breathing human beings. Like I said, this is the size of a baby. I mean, they've already found the footprints. It is not healthcare. It is on a pretense. And because they say that they do pregnancy tests at a fee, they do STI testing at a fee, ultrasounds at a fee. By the way, pregnancy centers do all those three, charge $0 because they're donor supported, okay? So the thing is that the lion's share of their money comes from abortion. It is a money racket for them, and they're just going to keep this going as long as possible. In fact, let me tell you, during this last election, this primary that just took place, this is so important to them that they just took out 5 of our people, and we'll talk about this later, because they have poured millions of dollars into this state because we have our little abortion clinic down the street. All right, so they do not want to see that go away. It's all about money. It's not about health at all. It is, if they truly cared about her, and oftentimes they say, well, you don't care about the mother. Oh, yes, we do. Yes, we do. We have seen too many walking wounded, walking dead, if you will, and we don't want that for our state. And our children are dying here in our state, and that's unacceptable for us. Yeah. And so, no. It is not healthcare. It is just their way. Planned Parenthood and then the propaganda from I'm going to say the progressive movement is all about, they're wordsmiths. They use words very eloquently and try to make you believe. Like at the legislature, for example, they would say this antiquated bill and and they kept saying it over and over and over because they say it long enough. Guess what happens?
They believe it to
People
be true.
believe it, right? In fact, like the language that they would say, well, abortion is between a woman and, you can finish that sentence, and her doctor, right? So, I hate to tell women, but you don't see that doctor. You don't see that doctor before. You probably may not even see him. Maybe he'll come in and shake your hand. If not, he'll stand there at the foot of the bed, and you won't ever see him again. So it's really not your doctor. It's an abortionist. So it is not about healthcare at all. It's about money.
Well, along those lines, fetal trafficking, this is something that gets kind of swept under the rug. But I know the Center for Medical Progress has recently released sworn testimony that contradicts some of the claims that Planned Parenthood has shared, that their corporation had never participated in the sale of aborted baby parts. They merely donated them and then was compensated for the expenses. So I'm not quite sure what the difference is there, but obviously this topic kind of blew up with the Project Veritas footage that came out a few years ago, and then it very quickly just became quiet. But there's still below the surface chatter about body parts being shipped and sold. Is fetal trafficking truly taking place? Is this conspiracy theory? Is it fact? Is it fiction? Is there a nefarious cash crop component that's just sitting underneath the surface that we're not aware of?
Oh, it's true, and they're going to do everything that they can to cover their tracks. And I hate to be so, rash about this, but they just lie. They will lie. They will do whatever it takes to continue to do what they do. And so, it just is. And I've also watched many of the documentaries, and it is like they were saying they paid $700 for a liver, or, they were caught on camera, talking about the prices for the baby, the tissue and things like this. Yes. And so, yes, they sell them. In fact, UNM was caught here with Dr. Boyd here in Southwest Women's Option. They were caught selling those parts, and they had to stop. But there's still trials and everything pending over that. So it's true. They have sold baby body parts. Okay.
HB 51, for those of you who may not be aware, New Mexico is front and center on this issue. It's probably one of the most divisive subjects in the state.
It is.
I know a year ago, it was miraculously shut down last year in Santa Fe. Can you, you were right in the middle of all of this, in front and center. In fact, I got your emails. I'm like, you had me in limbo. What's she up to? What is she? All of that. But can you just guide us through a little bit of that journey back a couple years ago, just from a legislative standpoint, being there in that moment?
Oh, it was probably one of the biggest highlights of my entire life. And, we're going to continue to fight this, because once Governor Grisham was elected, one of the first things she said is, bring me that bill and I'm going to sign it. That meant the abortion bill. And she is bound and determined to have an abortion bill here that's going to eradicate the 69 law that we have on the books that states that if an abortion is to take place, it would be in a hospital with doctors, okay, for the life of the mother, and rape and incest. That's it. It's supposed to be very, very small, right? Of course, you know what happens when you kick a door open. Everything, the floodgates. And so, but the thing is, they want, because Roe versus Wade is in place right now, what's happening is allowed because of that law, all right? Well, they wanted to get rid of the old statute, all right, so that Roe versus Wade would be the law of the land, and then abortion could be perpetrated on every corner. In fact, they wanted to push it out to all the little small communities. So, so what we did was we went up there against Goliath, frankly, because we had and I'm going to say this right away, is that this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. It's a life issue, and what it is we had people in the House, and it went to the House first, and it passed, and we're thinking, oh my goodness, and I was in a coalition with Vince Torres from New Mexico Family Policy Alliance, and Elisa Martinez from New Mexico Alliance for Life, and then of course Right to Life. And he was like, wow, he says, this is pretty doubtful, because we have a Democratic House, Democratic Senate, that majority on all those, and then a Democrat governor that's bound and determined to have this bill.
So the writing was on the wall.
We were like, we had a snowball's chance, as they say, to get this through. And I was just praying the whole time. But what happened was we got a gift. It was a miracle. It's called New York and Virginia. And they're the ones that lit up the sky saying, we now want to be the capital, right? So they passed abortion to birth in New York. And then Virginia was wanting to go further and have infanticide. It's like, if you don't want this baby's born, you can go ahead and choose to do away with that child then.
Sure.
So people here were outraged over what had happened then. Well, I've been fighting this fight for a really long time, and I said, hello, this has been happening for a decade. Mm-hmm. And we're like, you guys have been asleep, but we're so glad you're awake. Now it's time to get up and move. Sure. So what we did is we organized pretty much the entire state, and we began just beating that drum. And we had people calling Santa Fe on a daily basis. While I was there, that phone, all the phones, never stopped. It was kind of comical at some point. You go into the offices and they go, it's your turn to take the abortion bill today. Oh, wow. Because they rang constantly. We're glad. People in New Mexico rose up, okay? So we also had 3 rallies, one of 500 people, another one of 500 people, and another one, the prayer rally at night in the snow. 2 of them in the snow. Over 1,000 people showed up for that rally. Mm. And something very telling that Representative Rod Montoya, Minority House Speaker, says, they've never been afraid of you before. Mm. He says, I'll tell you what, he goes, they're afraid of you now. So what happened is we lobbied and called and got everybody. We went to all the representative senators that we could talk to see if they couldn't change, we couldn't swing a few votes. But on the night that HB 51 went down, we thought we need 6 senators that will come across the aisle and will vote with us. And I have to say, and see if I can even, I cry almost every time I repeat this, but I was sitting in the gallery, and you have to be really quiet there. And Vince and I were there. Elise had gotten sick, so we were taking a tally. But Senator Ivy Soto began to rant about how it was his Catholic faith that prompted him to vote for this bill. And we were like going, please be quiet. Please don't cite your faith, And so right after him, Senator Gabriel Ramos stood up. And he said, well, I'm Catholic too. He says, and I don't know where you go to church. He says, but that's wrong. And he says, and frankly, he says, I'm tired of protecting the lives of cats, dogs, frogs. He goes, coyotes. He says, and we can't protect the life of the child whose heart is beating within its mother's womb. He said, that is wrong, and I vote no. And it was like thunder hit. And it was silent right after that. And then the speaker said, any more debate? And that would have been the Republicans to debate. And they decided they were going to say nothing. So after that, they began a roll call vote. And I believe they began most of the Republicans. And they asked, call their names, and they all vote, no, 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 a yes here and there, no. And all of a sudden, we were counting all the Democrats that were coming across, and Vince and I just look at each other, and we're going, 6, we think we might have it. When it all came down, the speaker, the gavel came down, and he said, HB 51 defeated 24-18. Mm. It was beautiful. Our hearts just go, oh my God. Vince and I were looking at each other. We did a fist bump because he had to be quiet. I wanted to scream at the top of my lungs. But it was such a solemn occurrence that they all walked out of there in silence. He said, in fact, they called a 2-hour recess. They had never done that. And everybody walked out of that chamber just in silence. And we began texting the whole world and letting them know. Karen, in fact, was having their prayer reception for their banquet, and they erupted in cheers. People were just everywhere. We were sending out messages everywhere. People were crying, cheering. We were doing the same. We were just, after we got out. Mm-hmm. It was so exciting to see that. And we just really give glory to God because we really couldn't have done it, Jason, without him. Mm. The rallies were about God. And I say the reason that we defeated was because we began to bring and invite God into the Capitol. We would sing praises to him. We would worship him. We would speak a little. But mostly we brought glory to God and honor, and he said, step aside, and like I said, you heard me speak a few times, and sure. It was, I said it reminded me of in Second Chronicles when Jehoshaphat, he says, God, we don't know what to do, but our eyes are on you. And I just hung on to that, like, Lord, you do what you have to, and he did. He did. Not only did we win by what we needed, we won by 2 more. And so it was incredible, incredible. We still, that's still one of the greatest things in my life I've ever been part of. So, yeah.
Now moving forward, HB 51, obviously we're in the middle of an election year,
Right.
so issues like this that are so divisive, they tend to kind of go right underneath the rug and they stay quiet for that year.
Yeah,
Then we have the election in November,
right.
and I think most on all sides of the debate are anticipating this issue coming right back full circle, moving forward. Is that something that you're anticipating?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It actually never went away for them. We might have thought that it did, but the mere fact that Planned Parenthood poured so much money that they unseated 5 of those 8. 5 of them. Gabriel Ramos was top on their, on their list. We lost John Arthur Smith, Gabriel Ramos, Richard Martinez, Mary Kay Papen, and Clementa Sanchez. It's been devastating to see that. We need to regain those seats because we know that the reason that they did it so that they could have their way in the next election. We know exactly what it is that they're doing, so we can't let them have those seats back. We will. The Democrats, the tickets are, and so we know that the other side that's running is all Planned Parenthood money that's come against. So we have to defeat that. We have to defeat that in the general. They just can't win. They can't have that. Not to mention, I think it's really showing the party what they will do to their own if they do not comply. So I think that sends a big message to them. And but I tell you what, I could never be so proud of those people as I am, because they stood for the right thing and they lost their position in this state. But we'll never forget them, and we're going to make sure that people don't forget what they did. So this election, we need to get out there.
Yeah,
We need to get out there and make sure.
it's crucial.
It is. It is.
Public awareness. How do we wake up our communities to the true realities of all the things that you've just shared over this last hour?
Jason, I have always been convinced that that lies in the church, frankly. And I'm in the middle of putting together something because I want to be invited by churches all over this state from now till election time. And it's letting them know their role. Pastor Mark Gonzalez from HAN, who I worked with to get those voter guides out, he stated that the church is responsible, that if the people will vote, they'll do vote. But if the pastor promotes that, they will vote about 98%. It increases it by that much because we have such a low level of participation. In 2013, we tried to pass an abortion ban on a 20-week ban on abortion, and 65% of the church did not vote. To me, that's disgraceful. But you know what? If there's not somebody there telling them, this is a really important issue and you need to get out there and vote, it's just not going to happen. This year, we've had a really larger amount of Republicans that have been engaged. And like I said, again, it isn't that party. However, we know that for the most part, they tend to be more conservative and more pro-life. All right. So I brought this book here. It's called Make Your Vote Count, and I'm not selling it. I didn't write it or anything, but the top issue is abortion. And it has become the issue of the day. Thus, Planned Parenthood spending millions of dollars in our state to defeat us, to try to keep it here legal in New Mexico. But it is also the issue the church members want and need to hear. Pastors need to sell, and they can't just say it on Sanctity of Life Sunday. That's not enough. When you've done that, it's already over.
Sure.
We need to be talking about this election from here come election day. The time has passed that we are being quiet and we don't want to offend people. You know, when people say that, well, we don't want to offend people, I say you just did, because I'm one of those people. And it's like, but I'm not the only one. You have to tell your people, you know, the pastors. And I don't mean to be hard on pastors, but you all are, we need you so desperately. I appreciate you more than you'll ever know, because I know where you stand. And I know that we have to continue sounding the alarm, beating the drum until we win. If we don't, we won't. So I'm putting together a message, and I'm asking people, I'm asking you, invite me. I don't care where in the state, I'll go. Gather people together, invite me. I want to share this message, because it's important that if we don't take care of this, the rest of it doesn't matter. You know, I've been told, I went to help one of the Fallen Five with a radio ad, and I went and did the ad for him. And they were talking about, oh, well, they're good for economic development or jobs or all these things here. And I said, been there, done that. I was the queen of economic development. And Cuba, that was my focus. I wanted to bring jobs for that community, and I did. I left them with lots of money in the bank. I did lots of good things there. But I think it's a higher calling to fight for life, because, see, without life, what does it matter? Mm-hmm. Who are we doing this for?
Sure.
Right? And so the thing is that we have got to get people engaged in the life matter, because until we get this one right, it's not going to matter, because it is, I always say, it made God's top 10. You know, thou shalt not kill. We really need to honor what God says. And it is, in my estimation, a slap in the face to God every time that an abortion takes place, because we are image bearers of God. And that right there is an assault on the image of God. Mm-hmm. And so we need to stop destroying the image of God. You know, we never will, obviously, but that's the attempt. The enemy, you know, when he came, it's like, I'm going to get rid of all the Jewish babies when Jesus was born, the Jews, you know, eliminate all of those people, anything that had a resemblance to God. Mm-hmm. So we're doing it again. We need to stop.
Are there opportunities, if, you know, there might be somebody out there right now that's listening and they get a true hold of, you know, everything that you just shared, are there opportunities to jump in the fight with you, or where would you recommend somebody start to engage on this issue?
Well, they could call us. I mean, we're going to be putting out, you know, we're a very small office, believe it or not. But we carry a big stick. Yeah. It's myself and my assistant. But I have more and more volunteers becoming engaged. Right now, we are calling all the churches throughout the state. If your church is not on our list, call us. And even if it is, call us, let us know. We need to make sure that if you're not on our list, there's a lot of people are like, we didn't know, call and get on our email list, because I'll send emails. Well, you saw it during the legislative session. I thought people were going to like unfriend me or unsubscribe, because I sent out, during that 60-day session, I sent out 51 emails. But I was keeping people informed of the process. Sure. And at first I thought, they're going to kill me, but they were grateful that they knew what was going on. Yeah. So we do our best not to spam people, but sure, we try to let people know what's going on all the time. So if you want to get on our email list, just call us. You know, we'd be glad to put your name on our email list and get you on there.
Sure. So can you share with our audience how would they be able to contact you?
It's 505-881-4563. And then if they want to go to our website, just look at our website. It's rtlnm.org. So, yeah, but they can just contact us like that.
So I have one more question, but I'm going to hop on to chat and see, because we've extended this out to so many social media program outlets, Facebook Live, Periscope, YouTube, Vimeo. If you're comfortable, I'll take a look at the chat and see if somebody has logged in, if they might have a question for you. Okay. My apologies. I should have extended that a long time ago to extend that opportunity. But I'm going to check now. So if you do have a question for Ethel, I'll check now, ask my one last question, and then I'll do one quick recap back to just make sure that we didn't miss anything along the way. So,
Okay.
if you're okay with that, let's
Sure.
let me take a quick glance and see where we are.
I'll take a drink of water.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we are in pretty good shape. I'm going to give out the information one last time. And okay. It would look to be pretty good. So if you are on YouTube, you can go to Church Alive ABQ. That's where you can see the subscription. Just simply log in. You can chat that way. Facebook Live as well. We'll take a glance at that. Or you can go to our website at churchaliveabq.com. It's sitting right on the homepage. You can access the chat that way. So in waiting one more time, I'm going to ask my last question. We'll take one more
Okay,
quick
sure.
glance. And Ethel, how can we be in prayer for you and the Right to Life Committee and all of those in the fight for that matter? How can somebody be in prayer for this, on this issue, and in support of you?
Well, I guess maybe just pray. I mean, not just pray, but sometimes the days get heavy. You know, I've also I've done the sidewalk counseling, and I just felt prompted by God to go do that. And there are just days that are very heavy. I've been on the phone trying to help somebody help their niece not have an abortion. Although I'm not in pregnancy center ministry, but I already, because of my training, like I said, connecting the dots, I was able to walk her through. And in the end, she still had the abortion. So there are some days that it just gets really, really heavy. And then, like I said, this election, I take it personal. It hurts my heart. Hurts my heart for these people. So, you know, there's just days that get really heavy for us. You know, so if they would just pray for us, that God would sustain us, He encourage us. You know, I ask for God's wisdom, His direction. I need to know which step to take. You know. Because I've only been there a year and a half, and God has been really good to me. He's given me favor. But I just pray that He would open the doors, and that He would open the doors for the state to welcome that they would want to know, you know. And so that's it. I just want people to just invite us in, you know, that the doors would open for that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Ethel, I appreciate you coming in and spending some time with us. I appreciate you being so candid. I mean, we hit a lot of difficult topics, a lot of difficult questions, and you sat down and gave us very candid, very truthful, very heartfelt responses, and I so appreciate that. Shall I do one last quick
sure. Go ahead.
chat, and then we'll wrap up. I think.
I'm scared him.
Well, it's not always the easiest
Yeah,
conversations
it isn't.
to have.
Yeah.
I think we're good. So,
I do want to encourage them, though. You know what? If they've been at that place, you know, reach out.
sure.
It's the best thing you could do. Really, I'm telling you, there's freedom. I mean, Jesus, you know. So I always like to lead with that, is that abortion is not the unpardonable sin. There is reconciliation, and God loves you so much, and He wants to lift that burden from you and help you be free and help you be able to go on and live a life that is normal. And so I just like to always let people know, you know, God loves you, and He's there for you.
You know, that's interesting, the definition of hope, that God will see you through every situation that you face,
Right.
including this one. And I think
Absolutely.
that's definitely an important final note and a final
Yeah.
thought to leave our audience with. So, everyone, blessings. We definitely appreciate this time once again, Ethel. And for those of you watching, we hope that you just had the opportunity to hear some things that you may not in a normal fashion, and you know, be willing to sit down with some of the nitty gritty. And so, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Blessings out there to everyone
bless.
that's listening. Have a great day.